We're ready? Good evening. Welcome to the September 11th Village Board Work Session. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. So, do we have any announcements this evening?
I have one. I want to invite everyone to our next Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee meeting on Tuesday, October 8th at 7 p.m. here in Village Hall. I think it's a great opportunity for the public to stay engaged, and even though if you're not on this steering committee, you should see what the conversations that are happening in the room. I would also ask that the agendas and notes would also be published so that the public can also stay engaged. Yesterday, when we had our meeting, we had a interesting visitor, that being Victoria from the town of Ossining. The town of Ossining has at least offered to sort of collaborate with the village in the planning process. And I know that typically, um, we are when doing a comprehensive plan, that is your individual blueprint for your own community. So if there are plans to collaborate, I think that it's important that the public is made aware of it. During my time here on the board, we have had conversations about one water fee, understanding that we have one water system and that we are one Ossining. Um, you know, Here in the village of Ossining, we have a series of IMAs. Even right now with Project Forward, removing elected positions to which I see as a way to further consolidate the town and village. And if this is one more way to push us closer to that, then I think it's important that that the public is made aware, and that if we are going to be planning as a community together, that the public is definitely aware of the intentions of political bodies. So please continue to pay attention to what's happening, because I think it's important.
Okay.
There are no plans to collaborate, so on the comprehensive plan or do them jointly. We talked about making sure that we're aware of what each other are doing and if there's possible synergies to be aware of them.
The definition of synergies.
The definition of synergies is that as a town and a village, we share certain resources. So how those resources are used, because they're used by all town and village people, could be impactful. It is not to say, and nothing would be done without the approval of the steering committee, and everything is public. So it's just a matter of making sure that we don't miss opportunities, as we sometimes have in the past when we don't look at what other communities around us are doing.
So I will say that yesterday when I asked the question, the reason that people believed that it was important for them to be there was particularly with the schools. It wasn't an issue. They were like, oh, what we do in the town, what we do in the village can affect the schools. That being said, that didn't really sit well with me, because if I want to have a conversation with the school and think about how we're going to affect the schools, then I would invite the school board and not necessarily the town comprehensive plan committee or whatever the likes are. And seeing how day by day we might start to see town employees working for the village, I think it's important that we are mindful of what's happening.
Also, town employees who may also live in the village and vice versa. So the other thing I think it's important to notice is that the study that we were referencing was specific and not part of the plan, but it spoke to school impact studies. So as you know, one of the biggest concerns we have with our school district is overcrowding. And development in the town and the village and in Briarcliff contributes to the overcrowding of the school district potentially. So when we're planning for growth or when we're planning for housing, it's important to consider the impact. A specific study separate from the plan, if the town and village and Briarcliff decided to engage on it, or if any one entity decided could engage on it, should take into consideration all the municipalities that impact the school district to develop a return that can be specific to the school district, so that when we're negotiating with developers on what the amount should be that would help remediate some of the issues that we're having with the school district, particularly with regard to capital needs, that we would have a bigger pie and a bigger pool of funds to do that. But that is a separate study and can be an offshoot of a comprehensive plan if the plan calls for greater density in any municipality, and it can be a way that municipalities can do it effectively. You can do it separately or you can do it together, but it's a very specific study. And the school district would absolutely be engaged. So there's no, again, these are just things to keep in mind for the future. I'm happy to talk to anyone publicly about them. There are no secrets here.
All right, and have you updated the public about your plan to expand the village manager's office?
That's a personnel decision that has not been finalized by that board, and it is confidential at this point.
Actually, with respects to who the person is not important, but with respects to their roles, particularly, excuse me, Madam Manager, I'm not done. Particularly what their actual duties and responsibilities are, I think that is important, because anytime that we go into budget,
Personnel discussion.
again, it's about duties and not about who the exact personnel is. And with respects to executive session or not executive session, what the law says is may and not shall. So my question to you is, are you prepared to talk to the public about expanding
I will talk to the public
office?
about whatever they want to talk about.
All right, so can you please update us on why you feel the need to expand your office?
I really feel that this is a little bit of being put on the spot, because we're not talking about expanding my office. We're talking about making sure that the community has the capability to do the ambitious plans it has. And if it does, we need to build capacity. Any capacity that will be built, it will be precedented on the fact that we will get a return on investment in that. The village does not have a tremendous success in grant writing. We leave money on the table, and that's something that we can improve by greater capacity in-house. We also have many, many ambitious plans that we want to do. Any decision to expand any office, any position above what is being done now will be discussed with the budget in context and going forward with the input of the board. I don't make those decisions singularly.
All right, so what I would say is that when you talk about capacity, those are very broad words. When you talk about the ambitious plans, again, when you're doing your
when I talk about my
Madam
plans,
Manager,
it was outlined.
I will please, I would ask that you allow me to finish my statement. It's important that you are clear and concrete, again, because when we did our budget conversations last year, we did not have in mind of an expansion of the village management's office. This particular position was at one time a part of the village management, and at that time the board felt that it was a unnecessary position. When you speak about grant writing, I would argue that outsourcing the grant writing piece.
I really think this is a much bigger discussion.
I would appreciate if you not reply anymore. This was under, that you were not there, this was under a matter of personnel, an entire organization. I am really concerned that you are now asking anybody sitting here about matters of personnel. It isn't about a box. It was an entire discussion that was very specifically asked at that meeting. Were you at the meeting?
So okay,
no,
excuse me, because I actually was talking and you interrupted me. So again, whether or not you want to make this an issue about the particular personnel, again, when it comes to executive session, personnel may, that is the word, may be discussed in executive session. What I am talking about, again, because when we do our budgets, we outline duties and performance and all those things. And I think that it's important that that comes to the public so that people won't be sitting up there in the meeting one day looking and say, oh, we got a new staff person. Where did they come from?
Okay, well, it's almost 8:30 in the evening. Now is the time for announcements, and we have an agenda ahead of us.
I just, before, and I won't take any more time, I'll write a memo asking that we discuss. I just want to say I did not know about I guess I'm going to pay more attention to the meetings and go to the meetings with some people, but the comprehensive steering plan committee meetings, I just want to make sure, especially when I write a memo and I have to speak to people about this tomorrow, because I just found out about it here. So you had a scheduled meeting like you've been having. The mayor and yourself attend these meetings along with the appointed steering committee members that we appointed.
Yes.
You usually have an agenda, I'm assuming?
Absolutely.
Okay. So who invited the town to come discuss the possibility of collaboration or discussion about consolidation or that topic of unified town, or like, how did that
Okay,
happen?
this is not a conversation about unified town. This was a conversation
I'm
about if
asking
we
you,
are
I don't
going,
know.
I'll explain it to you.
You didn't.
If we are going to go out to the public and do community outreach, soliciting people's interests, questions, and concerns when it comes to particularly issues of development or not development in anywhere in our community, particularly as it might impact the school district, would there be a benefit to the village and town and perhaps the village of Ossining as well, sharing the expense and inviting all of our constituents to be part of that conversation? I'm sure you, like me, have had conversations with people in the community who are angry at us about Stony Lodge. And I'd like to be able to be in a room where we can all have the information at and have a real conversation about development, because people don't understand that across the street might be the village, but this is the town. And it is part of one conversation. So that's what was raised as a consideration. And we discussed it 24 hours ago at the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee.
Okay, I mean, you're one of the co-chairs, right? So can we was that discussed before, or did like the
No,
members
that's why I asked that all agendas and notes be published so that the public can.
That's
stay
perfectly
abreast of it.
appropriate. I don't know where we are with, we do.
They are
often-
published. But we can publish them, and I have no problem publishing them. There's no.
Exactly.
You know, I'm just learning about this.
I'm
That's all.
going to restate again, and I want to be real crystal clear, because this wastes a lot of time and it misleads people, and it's wrong. It is wrong to deliberately mislead people. The town and village are embarking on a similar exercise at the same time. There is a tremendous amount of overlap. It has nothing to do with any sort of coterminus or anything else. The whole issue is to make sure that when we're planning for a waterfront, when we're planning for transportation, that we are taking into consideration that those spaces are used by town and village residents, period. There may be potential to collaborate, there may not be. That is the basis of the discussion. We have not determined any collaboration. We are not intentionally planning any collaboration. We just want to be aware of what the other one is doing to make sure that we don't miss opportunities, to partner together that can get us grant money to do the things we need to do, whether it's a parking structure, whether it's housing, whether it's anything else, because that is the nature of how you do things. Regional planning is incredibly important to the state. Municipal government and shared services is important too. There are ways to do things. No one is suggesting anything other than making the best use of our time and being as efficient as possible. Everything is transparent.
Mayor Garrity, I just wanted to thank you for clarifying, because you actually, I agree with you that that's all the time, just that I'm learning about it here. So just wanted to take a little bit more time to dive into it, because it was not communicated from your office, all due respect, about the intentions for me to actually understand instead of reacting at the meeting on camera. So, and to you, Manager DeTore, just point of order, your tone for the past 2 meetings to me has been unacceptable, and just be a little bit more. I feel very uncomfortable. It's pretty aggressive, and I just,
Okay.
I'm sorry if I'm intimidating you.
And no, I just in these meetings, we as elected officials can bring up whether you call it or assume that it's a time waster. That is your prerogative. But we have the right to discuss and bring up whatever we feel is important and of importance to our residents and our taxpayers.
You have the right to bring up what you think is important as an independently elected official.
Yeah.
And you have been heard. And staff has a right to explain their position and help the public understand our understanding of the situation in reality, not in the way it may be presented by some individuals.
Yes, but with that said, the village manager is also his or her own separate entity that cannot speak on behalf of the board, only themselves. And when doing so, even though it's been a challenge for us electeds, mainly us to the mayor and as a trustee through many issues, we still have to remind ourselves to hold our composure, be very respectful. And I know that that's been lost by all of us the past couple of months, including myself. The CEO of our village, I do expect a higher standard of how to conduct his or herself. That's all.
Noted. Okay. Well, we're all leaders here. Let's do our best to lead our community in a thoughtful and responsible manner. Does anybody else have any announcements?
Yeah, I do. So, some of us were downtown in the waterfront. I don't know if this was discussed for what I consider to be a really terrific celebration of heroic behavior of our current volunteers, first responders, and also in celebration of people's lives from 9/11, 18 years ago. It occurred to me, my daughter called me up this morning and reminded me that now there were some children that were actually born around that time who never got to know their father or mother, and they're now adults because it's been 18 years. I think Ossining, as always, just brings forth the best, I think, of human nature with the fire departments, the police chiefs. It's one of those moments that make me really proud of being part of this community and the public. I read something on Facebook. I'm not going to quote it because it's a long story, but it's a 38-year-old woman who talks about the meaning of 9/11. I was downtown and um, I had lost two people that worked with me, two of my colleagues actually, um, and remember that day. And for me, it's a very sad day. But for this 38-year-old woman, what she had said on Facebook is this is an opportunity for people to come together, um, to have real tolerance for other people's views, and to have empathy, which was mentioned many times today by a number of people, for people in all the communities, and really take an opportunity to participate in their community and instead of mourning losses, rather spend their time with their family. Also a theme I think that was mentioned actually by few, you included, but I think a few of the speakers today, which I found very moving. But also to, if you haven't been volunteering for something, today would be a great day to start thinking about the community. On her Facebook post, she had a whole bunch of different organizations that really span the globe, because one of the things she had mentioned is that we oftentimes need to remember how many people were killed who were there traveling. There was a hotel there. My boss was supposed to be honored that day. He happens to be originally from India, and he had a whole bunch of family members staying at there because he was supposed to go to the Twin Towers because he had achieved some great honor, and he had asked people to come. And a lot of his family members were there. They were actually did not die in that that day, but I remember his reaction to a very special day for him that turned into not so pleasant, and that after that he had actually resigned a year to the date and went on to do a lot of volunteer work back in India because he was so moved by the camaraderie that day. So there were a lot of wonderful events there today, but one of the things for me is people's ability to come together and work towards a common um, community, the betterment of a community. I actually had a nice speech written, and I'm having a hard time finding it. That's why it was taking me a while to. So thank you for you guys for having these conversations, because it gave me time to look for it, and yet I did not find it. I'm sure I'll find it in 10 minutes from now. But I was really moved by this 38-year-old who actually had not much to do with 9/11, except that so many people in her community were killed. She lived very close to the area. So for those of you who are taking a few moments today to think about people that you know, I think it's appreciated by their families. That was it.
Any other announcements or comments? Yes, the 9/11 ceremony every year is an incredibly moving remembrance. It's organized by our first responders from Ossining and Briarcliff. And I'll put my remarks online, so I won't repeat them all now in the meeting. But for some reason, this year seemed harder, and I'm not the only one who felt that way. I felt more raw and emotional this year than I have in some other years. On 9/11, I lived in Astoria, and I worked crazy hours. I was actually asleep when the attacks happened, and I got a call from my mother-in-law when she finally was able to get through and make sure that we were okay. And my sister-in-law just walked over the Queensboro Bridge from Manhattan, and Eric went and picked her up, and I just remember sitting in the living room. We're all in our 20s, just trying to figure out what had happened, make sense of it. And but what I spoke about tonight was how in the wake of 9/11, the whole world was with America, and we were an inspiration to the world. And now 18 years later, there's a whole generation of people who they have no living memory of that occasion. And I ask that we honor the lives that were lost and taken that day by focusing on the tremendous expression of humanity and generosity and heroic acts that were in the wake of 9/11, and how we all looked at each other and saw the best of ourselves and each other in that moment. And if we could get back to having that mindset, I think we could make some really positive change in the world. And anyway, it was a tough day. And then we have a village board meeting, and I have a few calendar items to update folks on. This Saturday, our community will come together once again for a fun activity that raises money for Ossining Matters, the local educational foundation that provides enrichment programming for Ossining students. If you have not yet registered, you still can. You can register online. I think you can even still register day of the race in the morning down at the community center. But go to ossiningmatters.org and register for the 5K run and 2-mile walk. Hundreds of folks come out. It's I can't remember, I haven't done it myself. It's $20 or $25 to register, and get out there. Hopefully it'll be a beautiful day, and it's a really lovely path through downtown and on the Croton Aqueduct. Folks of all ages and abilities. It's not a cutthroat race. You can enjoy yourselves, and it is a trail run. So it's if you're a 5K racer, this is not going to be your best time, but it will be a great time. And I just learned, I guess I need to read carefully in my web blast that's coming out tomorrow, that there'll be more information. You can learn about the fun ride that's happening in honor of Car Free Day, which is next week. It's been organized to start at 12 noon at Market Square. Be sure you have a helmet. Helmets are required for this ride from Market Square to Scarborough Station and back. And I assume it's open to people of all ages. Nope.
It's open to adults and children with parents because it's a ride with lots of hills.
Okay. Great. And also, we mentioned it's in honor of Car Free Day, which is later that week. And if you look on the web blast, there's a link there. You can sign up to take the pledge to go car free on International Car Free Day, which is September 20th. Okay. Very good. September 20th, which is next Friday. And one more programming note. Next Thursday, September 19th, is the Ossining documentary and discussion series screening called Tres Maisons d'Osson, which is about 3 children of incarcerated parents. It's a documentary from their perspective. It is happening in a week where that is a broader conversation. You may have, on Sunday evening at 10 o'clock, tuned into the town hall meeting that was hosted by Lester Holt at Sing Sing Prison. In fact, one of the folks who was part of that town hall meeting is on the panel on Thursday evening, Lawrence Bartley, who had been incarcerated at Sing Sing. His wife is also on the panel, and she's a member of the Sing Sing Prison Museum Board. And I mention that particularly because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the Sing Sing Prison Museum is hosting at the waterfront a pretty amazing dance program called The Weight Room. So you can buy tickets on the Sing Sing Prison Museum website. Families who are impacted by incarceration can attend for free. For the rest of us, you can buy your tickets online, and their performances day and evening on Saturday and Sunday, I think, or there's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, some day, some evening. So so get your tickets now. And it is an acrobatic dance performance. The stage is this dynamic moving space, and it's called The Weight Room because it the choreography tells the story of the experience of the families of incarcerated people who spend an inordinate amount of time just waiting in so many different situations. So please join us Thursday at the Ossining Public Library for the documentary about 3 children who are the children of incarcerated individuals, and you can learn more at ossiningnDocumentaries.org. And then buy your tickets from the Sing Sing Prison Museum website to attend The Weight Room, the acrobatic dance performance happening down on the waterfront Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of this weekend. Yes?
There's links for those items in the web blast.
Excellent. So really just open up your web blast and read it and click all over the place. Okay. Great. I think we're ready to get started on our work session at 8:45 in the evening. Madam Manager.
Yes. So right now we have a continued discussion on proposed laws, local laws 6, 7, and 8, 2019 regarding notification to land use boards, revisions to Chapter 270 zoning, and 233 subdivision, and 246 telecommunications.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. We last discussed these 3 proposed local laws on July 25th. And the board made a number of comments with regard to the then 3 proposals. I did forward to the board members yesterday revisions to all 3. The primary revision, after reviewing what the board members were saying and looking what other municipalities did, is that the signs that we have talked about placing on properties would be provided to the applicants by the village through the village building and or planning department. This would remove the issue as to exactly what is on the sign, is it an appropriate sign, and whose sign is it. The applicant would be responsible to maintain the sign, make sure it's not destroyed or damaged in any way, make sure it stays up, and provide proof that it has remained up for the necessary period of time. The proposed local laws also would provide that the signs must be posted 1 sign per every 300 linear feet with regard to street frontage. So if it is a fairly large development, as you would see more likely under the subdivision ordinance, they would have to have multiple signs. And this way, at least, folks are notified as to that there is an application pending before one of the village's land use boards. I should point out that in Peekskill, they actually color code their signs depending upon which land use board it is. I thought that might actually get a little bit, we're trying to cut back on signs, and actually this might have multiple signs. But the idea here is effectively that an applicant would come in, they would get the sign. I am told by John Hamilton that in the town the sign is $50, now, interestingly enough, City of Yonkers just amended their city code less than 2 months ago. What they do is it's basically a deposit, so that if you pay, let's say, $150, $250 for the sign, and at the end of your application, you have 10 to 15 days to return your sign. If you return the sign, you get your money back for the sign. Now, that's not in here, but that can be put in. That was something that Yonkers has. But allowing the village essentially to be the entity that gives out the signs, the village would then, through the planning department, would determine essentially what has to be on the sign. Have the number for the planning department. You probably have seen the signs that the town of Ossining uses. If you go on Route 133 now and see where the Bethany Arts Community is, there are the big yellow signs that are right on the front lawn there. And that would be something that we're talking about. The applicant would get the sign. The applicant would have to put the sign out. It would have to be out a certain number of days before the hearing and would have to remain out for that particular period of time. And individuals, if they wanted to, obviously could call the planning department and get the information as to what application is pending with regard to a particular piece of property. So that's what is Local Law 6 is to amend the zoning code with regard to notification. Local Law 7 deals with subdivisions, and Local Law 8 deals with telecommunications, but they are all effectively the same in terms of what they would provide, where the sign has to be located, where the sign is to be placed. And again, the responsibility for maintaining the sign during the period of the application process rests with the applicant. It would just be that we're not telling the applicant, you have to make this particular type of sign. We will give you the sign. And this board could determine essentially what that fee is. As I said, the town's charge is $50. And even though the town code talks about a replacement fee, John Hamilton said really hasn't been an issue. Yonkers, as I said, has a slightly different situation. It's a slightly higher fee, but it is simply a deposit and gets returned back at the end of the process. So, and that's something that, this board, could decide as to how they wanted to do it. But this would provide notification to individuals other than just the people who receive mail notification or postcard notification. Anybody going past a particular property would therefore be notified as to what is going on. So that's the essence of 6, 7, and 8. The difference from before, in the earlier versions, it detailed what the sign would say. That's not in here except for saying that there is an application pending at a particular day that it's before the board. But the other information is really going to be an internal planning decision as to what we think needs to be on those signs. We're not going to leave it up to the individual to make sure they have the right kind of sign, if it's the right kind of plastic, or it's the right kind of wood, or it's on the right kind of post. The village will simply provide the signs, and that would, I think that avoids that. And again, depending on the size of the property that's involved, you have to post signs every 300 linear feet, and that would at least potentially have multiple signs that would be out there for whether it's a land use issue that's before this board, planning board, board of architectural review, zoning board of appeals, or the historic preservation commission. Any of those would be subject to that.
Thank you. Questions and comments? You.
Of
You're
course.
someone.
Listen, thank you, Stuart. So I have a few questions in here. So the size of the signs were removed from the last time. We had a number of how big of a sign was going to be. So for a residential project, like I brought up before, Postchester has two different signs. One about 24 by 18 or 24 by 24 or 36 by 24. Small signs for residential spaces is not a problem. I think for a commercial or for a big housing project or any big project that it has happened in the past year, I think it's very hard for us to see a small sign, even if we have 5 signs in front of the property. It just gets blended in within the project itself. Driving here early today, actually driving home early today, passing one of the IFCA properties in Spring Street, I noticed a big sign, about 4 feet by 6 feet, and it talks about the project that they're doing there. It was a great sign to see. It's great because the community knows what's happening there. The community knows what's going to happen to that particular project. So, to me, again, this is my opinion, and that's something that I have brought up in the past. For a big project, it should be a different sign. It should be more like what New York City does, what Portchester does. I'm not sure what Peekskill does on the commercial end, but if we're just going to put a small sign in front of a big project, I'm going to take Hudson Steps. You're going to have 1, 3, 4 signs in front of the lawns, and because the grass is overgrown, you're not going to see it. But if you have a big sign, then it's a different story. So I don't know if the rest of the board how they feel, but my suggestion will be to have a different size for a commercial space, and for a big project or residential or a mix. Should be something a little bit different. In regards to the $50 refundable,
No, not refundable. Right?
The $50
If
is
you
what the
return-
town
if you re-
charges. What Yonkers now does is they have it
but
as
that's part. I believe I saw part of the memo
the
said.
fee is not referenced in here. I mean, it would be a
Yes.
fee that would be determined by through.
So I kind of go back to a little bit of what happened in 2018. Sure, our planning department made a decision where all the notifications sent out to the public were going to be done by the applicant. So that's, again, that goes back to an additional fee that the applicant has to pay. So it's about $150 more to what they're doing an application either for the zoning board, planning board, or any of the other boards. So that's something that, and now we're going to give them the sign. And so I want to make sure what the rest of the board feels. Are we giving out the signs for free? That is going to be part of their application fee? Are we increasing our application fees? Or how do we are going to be managing this? Because I still have a problem that we are having the public or the applicant do their own mailing and charging them for the application and having an additional fee to that.
Let me answer a few things that you mentioned. I'll start with the last. The process of mailing notifications, be it by postcard, be it by letter, it is, from every jurisdiction that I have looked at, it is done by the applicant. It is not the responsibility of the individual. The only exception, I believe there was one, where you would pay to get the list of abutters, and then you would give the mailing literally to the planning department in that particular jurisdiction to mail it out. But it is essentially, someone comes in, they will go to Jamie Kane and they will say, and Jamie Kane will provide them with a list of everyone within, let's say, 300 feet or 400, whatever it is. Within Westchester County, the obligation to mail is the applicant's, because it's the applicant's application. They're the ones who are sending it out. And as I pointed out last time, with the exception of historic preservation, everything else just need to be regular mail. One thing that I have discussed with the prior planning director and is that, for example, if someone were doing work in one of our, down near Revolutionary Road or in those areas, if you went 300 feet, you might be taking in Liberty Knolls and you might be taking in Mystic Point. And so what we've done in those cases is to get it to the managing agent and make sure that everybody knows that and maybe get it posted in one central location, because that could, it's all of a sudden you could be mailing it to a much larger number. But so that's one with the issue as to mailing.
So may I, you finished with that one? Because I want to answer that one.
Okay, you want, okay.
Yeah. If I may, please, sorry. So yes, I agree 100% with you. All the municipalities, they do have the applicant do their own mailing. The application fee, though, is a lot smaller than the application that we have in here. So again, yes. I know. So I just want to clarify that because our previous planner, I had a discussion in regards to that, and that was my understanding then, that because of what the application fee, that was part of the mailing portion of it. So yes, I agree with you, because I have done that myself, and even in Mamaroneck, I think it's the village of Mamaroneck, there's a person who does all the stuff for you. At that time, it was $150, I believe, to do the mailing and all the stuff. Those very what they do is, no matter what kind of mailing you have to do, you have to be a certified mail. So you have to bring proof of that mailing to when you come to a board meeting, and you have to take 2 pictures of the sign that is part of your application. One in the beginning when you post it, and pretty much one through, I think, a couple pictures that they ask you. I can't remember that, but they ask you for, that's sort of like the proof and how do you verify the location of the sign and all those stuff. Right. So yes, I agree with you. All the municipalities do it. Again, that's something that I'm going to bring it up on the budget part, where we looked at the numbers on the applications and how do we go about this.
Now, on the
Thank you, Stuart.
on the issue of size of signs, I'm not familiar with the IFCA sign, and I don't know if,
It's required by New York State.
okay, by New York State for the particular
It's
project.
a grant project.
What I would say, because the proposed local laws essentially bring the sign preparation in-house, internally,
procedures can be developed that don't have to be part of the code as to, well, if you're going to be this particular size project, you're going to have this particular size sign. And the village could cost out to see what those signs would cost. By not putting the original versions of these actually said what the size of the signs would be and what they would say in it. But as I said, if you take it in-house and basically the village is providing the sign, then, within the planning department with, discussions with board members, there could ultimately be a determination for this particular property of this particular property might have that, and where, what those, signs, would indicate. The whole idea is to effectively notify the public that there is a particular parcel that is the subject of some application before one of our land use boards. I know that at the last meeting there was a question, there was some discussion about you put up an elevation or you put up an initial artist rendering of what the project is. In the jurisdictions that I have looked at throughout Westchester, and I think one or two in Rockland, it's basically just describes what should, that this is a project before historic preservation. This is a project for planning. It will be before them on this date, and here is a number to call. The more detailed information, this is going to be, let's say, we use Hudson Step, 188 unit development, or this is going to, that, if it were viewed that would be something, what happens when you get to that is you then don't get to generic signs, because then you're sort of getting into very specific signs for particular types of projects. And again, what this board thinks is where it can come. This is just a matter that instead of telling the applicant this is the kind of sign you got to put up, we say this is the sign. We're going to give you the language. We may require that it's a bigger sign for a bigger project so that it stands out. But we're going to give you the sign. In terms of what the fee for that sign is, we could cost that out, and that's a question. Do you get it back as a la Yonkers, or do you actually make it as a fee as part of the application? You bake it into the application.
So I think what you're saying is I'd like to see the larger signs for, we use Hudson Step as the example, as a really big high profile project. We want people in the neighborhood to know that something is happening in a land use board so that they can come and be heard on that subject much earlier in the planning and decision making process. I wonder if there might be a way to be both more vague and more specific in the law and have the concerns that you're raising be addressed, because what we don't want to do is have a code that has to be updated because we realize that lawn signs that are 18 by 20 by 24 versus 24 by 36, we can order it, it's good to not be too prescribed in that regard and leave some up to the discretion. And I wonder if maybe we rather than saying every X number of feet, there will be another sign, say that that there's an expectation of signage that is easily visible to people in the neighborhood and consistent with the magnitude of the project. In the case of larger commercial or large residential projects, it may be determined that a larger size sign or a sequence of signs works better for a given project. I'd like us to have a little bit more flexibility in that regard.
So I like the 300 feet, and I also, because you brought up, again, I don't want to be too vague with the sign. Like if you have 188 units coming in your community, I think that should clearly be on there. And I actually would agree with you about larger projects having larger signs.
Oh, I agree entirely. The way it's written right now is that it has to be every 300 feet, because I think what they're envisioning is it's a lawn sign every 300 feet. And if we don't, every 300 feet on Hudson Step wouldn't be nearly as helpful as a giant sign at the intersection of Broad Avenue and State Street. And maybe we say Broad Avenue and State Street and on Water and on Hunter and on James. That may not be every 300 feet, but it may capture different eyeballs. And I want our staff to have the discretion to figure that out.
So what I would say is the issue with that is in theory that would make sense, but in the case that doesn't happen, right? Where if we allow flexibility and then there's an area is not there, then like, see, if you say 300 feet, someone can literally take their little tape measure and say 300 feet here, 300 feet here, 300 feet there. But there has to be
Kind
a
of
way.
arbitrary though.
Yeah, but there has to be a way to make sure that it actually reaches what you want it to reach.
So I kind of hear both sides. Trustee Casada's suggestion actually makes sense, and I'm supportive because I like specifying the residential versus the commercial, and instead of making it more vague, even though I see why the mayor suggested that, I think it has to be more specific. So like the 300 feet rule wouldn't apply if you're a commercial because you'd be complying with the commercial sign that we suggest is whatever, or as Stuart mentioned, the board, whatever size the boards choose. But if anything, I think it's being as specific as possible within those two groups, because then, as you said, it could just be yard signs every 300 feet. But we also don't want a big sign every 300 feet too, right? So, if anything, we want to be as crystal clear and detailed to applicants. And I do feel that commercial applicants, whether it's a Hudson step or whether it's a different, type project. I don't mean to shut them out, but
We're
just
just
that.
using them as our example because they're high profile. Yeah.
I just like them.
And the bigger the sign, the more likely it's going to be seen, hopefully in red. So if and I don't mind, and I know that we're going to create them in house. Tomorrow you can call the company that the village has been using for signs for years, and the chloroplast signs or whatever the discretion of village personnel is for the best sign that they feel is fit. But there's ways to get both done. One standard for a residential property and one standard for a commercial. Now, I don't know if we want to. I don't know at what point do we want a third option, or if we don't want a third option. So, like what you were talking earlier, if we have two generic signs that basically have the basic information that we fill in or they fill in, is that enough for a big commercial project, right? Because you had suggested a rendering, right? So is that when the village suggests to the developer or whoever, or the applicant, that we actually want a custom sign with more information? So that's kind of just those 3 points. So we can have two pre-made signs that are easy to use in-house, but we also have to determine whether or not we want to have the requirement of the spacing between the smaller sign and the bigger sign. And then thirdly, if we really want the sign to be effective with like a picture and more of a narrative, what does that look like?
Oh, please.
So, regarding to leaving that to the vague the information in regards to the size, I think I have concerns on that one because it definitely could be part of the application. It could be standard sort of an application that we have for the planning board, architectural review board, or the building department itself. But I know applications changes, and again, my concern from last year, and again, I can only refer to last year in 2018. It was a decision that was made by the planner then to change how things were being done. So when we leave that part for a staff, a village staff member to make the decisions, to me, it kind of affects the whole process that I was part in 2017, where we said no to that process, and it kind of changed in 2018. So that's my concern on that one. With time, things change. Yes, maybe a percentage of square footage and how the signs are developed, or depending on the property. In regards to the rendering, I can understand, not being part of this particular sign. What New York City does, and other municipalities do is, in a big project like this, you have to put a fence out of the property. Sure, you have to fence it out. So what New York City does, when you put a fence, you have to get a permit, and I believe we do have a permit for fences. So with that, the rendering is part of the fence permit instead of the application for the zoning board, architectural review board, or any of the land boards itself. So that could be. I know we're not looking into the fence permit right now, and I don't, unless the store wants to look at it, a fence permit right now. But that could be something that could be add to that. That could be something that could be added to that portion. If I feel strongly that in a big project, the community should be aware of what that project may look like. I think that's essential. Um, you know, so they can actually picture and be like, all right, that, they have an idea of what that means without going on an online system and look at the drawings. Um, so sort of that's what I am right now. I can live without the rendering or the elevation or the call elevation for this particular sign, but I think we should have something in writing in a law, something a little more descriptive than just leaving it vague.
Karen, I'm curious. You mentioned the example of the signage that's required by New York State because there's grant funding involved in one of the IFCA projects, which you probably know exactly a lot about that project. I imagine that project began before you came to us, and you've done those kind of signs. I wonder if is how prescribed is the signage regulation
It's
from
very
New York
prescribed.
State, and does it make sense? Is it something we should look at?
The purpose of that is to indicate that there's public funding being used. So it's a little bit different. It doesn't show a rendering. It doesn't say what's happening at the project. It just states that you're part of whatever specific grant program, and it recognizes the grant program. It's part of New York Homes and Community Renewal, so that people know that state is investing in that property. So it's very different than showing somebody what's going to be there. But it is a very prescribed sign in terms of typeface and everything. But they give you all that, and then you have to have the sign produced, which for a sign that big is a few $100s. It has to be produced a certain way. It has to be positioned a certain way near the building. So it is very prescribed, but it's a different purpose in terms of explaining what's actually happening, what the building will look like or anything like that.
Did you find that signage to be, even though it was providing information different from what we would be looking to provide, but was it very clear and
It was
highly
very
visible?
clear, yes.
Now, are there projects that could be of larger size where there would have to be multiple signs?
It's possible. That never came up, and I don't. It's possible. I don't know why. We can ask.
I was just curious because if we look at a project that has 3 street facings, we may want to be able to say we're requiring multiple signs because some people that walk down State Street every day never walk down Hunter and vice versa, for example.
So just for this particular building, because it is on a corner of, I think it's Acker and Spring Street, it does face 2 sides. I'm not sure. I would imagine you saw the sign on Spring Street though, so that I'm sure only 1 sign was required.
It's a corner. Well, in this particular one, it's a corner.
It's a corner, so it's probably
I
right on
think
the corner.
Yeah, it's
It's also not. We have a few properties that are quite significant in size. That's a manageable
That's
size.
a 17 for IFCA. That's quite a large building, but
Right, but not 188 units.
No.
Okay. What I'm hearing is that we're not quite ready for a public hearing.
That's fine. I got my homework. I know what I got to do.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Stuart.
You do? I don't, so I'm glad you know.
I got the notes. We're okay.
So you're going to come back to us with another draft incorporating what you've been hearing?
Yes.
Oh, great.
That's
Interesting to see that. I do have one question. You mentioned that with the exception of HPC, the notification by mail can be regular mail. So what is it for HPC?
certified.
And why is it
Because
more
they-
stringent for HPC?
Because there it's going to the particular applicant, and generally, as we discussed last time, it's really generally it's the village that's mailing that out to an applicant whose property is going to be designated most likely as a historic property or a district.
Oh, it's being generated
The
by
village
the
is-
village
Or if
committee.
there's a request for
Yeah.
a certificate of appropriateness, but in either way, that is the only section in the zoning code which specifically references the need for certified mailing. It is not required for either zoning or for planning. or
Okay,
for site- site plan.
those are two very different things, though. The village saying, we want to designate your property, your neighborhood as an historically significant structure or neighborhood. That I get with us requiring essentially of ourselves some certified mailing. because that's imposing some significant restrictions on those property owners going forward. A storefront that's looking to put up a sign and happens to be in an historic district being having more stringent notification requirements for a certificate of appropriateness than we have for things going out for the planning and zoning board seems to not make sense to me.
I don't remember that being.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I don't, when the powers that be put this in 2009, I think that's what they had, but I'm just going to.
It's not, yeah, that's interesting. It's not a long list, but yeah, that's, some of our notifications are interesting. Yeah.
Changes the traffic count for some people. It's a different effect.
Yeah.
Versus, yeah, I mean, you putting tables out affects your neighbor dramatically, depending on how you look at it. I mean, it's a different kind of effect, I would say, than some of this other stuff. I mean, I could understand why we do
this for a while. So
Well, I know, but while
like in a firm like that, just Levin's right because it makes sense as to why it's required, but the public doesn't really have an opportunity to come. I guess unless when it's being voted on by the board.
that is, I think, that's the purpose, is to notify your neighbors and the people next to you that if they want to attend a meeting regarding something like this, that they be made aware of it.
Sidewalk cafe permits are a manager approval unless there's, something that
An
that
obstruction
requires,
within it.
right.
They're not being informed about a meeting to discuss it or an opportunity to be heard on it.
Because I think generally the consensus was that sidewalk cafes are a positive thing
Yeah.
and they're good for economic development and vitality of downtown. And if the one requirement is that they're adjacent properties, which is like a small handful of certified letters that has to come out, that doesn't seem so crazy onerous, and it does seem appropriate
two or
because if you
three,
own the
yeah.
store next door, that you're the one who's going to be most impacted. So I get that. I'm comfortable
The
with that
other
standard,
thing
but
is,
I didn't know it, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Mayor, let me just make one correction if I might.
Sir.
There is no mailing requirement for a certificate of appropriateness,
Excellent. Okay, that makes me happy.
All right, excellent.
All right,
or only for the historic district designation.
that's a
that's
much heavier
historic.
lift, so that makes sense then. Thank you, sir. All right, number 2.
Next up, renewal of prisoner transportation agreement with Westchester County, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Karen. Folks, this is a renewal of an agreement that the village has had with the county for multiple years. This agreement would go from January 1st of 2019 to December 31st of 2020. It will increase the round-trip reimbursement rate for this year to $224.75, and to 2020 for $230.37. And the current IRS mileage rate goes up to 58 cents a mile. That is generally for the round trips that go back and forth. There are a few exceptions as to when an hourly rate can be applied. 4 exceptions. One is transporting female prisoners, transporting of 7 or more prisoners, which would require an additional officer, transportation of prisoners with Class A felony charges or classified by the Westchester County Department of Corrections as an A or AA prisoner, which means that they consider to present a present danger, or transportation from the county jail to a local court and back to the county jail where that exceeds 3 hours. If that occurs, it would be an hourly rate plus benefits based upon the collective bargaining agreement that's in effect for that particular municipality. This is a contract that the county does with every municipality in Westchester, and it's just a matter of getting it renewed. We provide insurance information to the county, and what I would ask is to be able to present a resolution to the board next week authorizing the manager to execute this agreement.
Could you remind, I wasn't listening carefully when you said the dates of this agreement.
1/1/19 to 12/31/20.
So would we be reimbursed at a higher rate retroactively for any that have happened so far?
We should be, yes, but
Okay.
we only just recently got it from the county because they only just got it approved from their end. So the answer is yes.
Okay, I thought there was a little blip there, but okay,
Nope.
that makes sense.
That's how it is.
Others have questions?
So I just have 2 questions.
Yes.
Do we actually make any money off of this arrangement? Is it a wash? Have we ever?
You know what? I don't know. It's a number that we are in a particular zone based upon our mileage from the county jail, and that's the number that the county sets. So I can't tell you if we make money. I don't know how many times we've had to do an hourly rate, but if I were to look at the agreement, I can tell you that within Zone 2, that includes Ossining, it includes Ardsley, Briarcliff Manor, Dobbs Ferry, Hastings, Irvington, Newcastle, North Castle, and Scarsdale. Those are all Zone 2. There are four zones. Well, within Zone 2, you're anywhere between 12 and 20 miles from the county jail.
Oh, okay.
Zone 1
That's why it's like
is
a
anywhere from 6
park.
to 10.
Okay.
Zone 3 would be anywhere from 23 to 30, and there's only one in Zone 4, that's Pelham Manor, and they are 35 miles.
Really? Okay.
So
Way out
that's
there.
calculated. But in terms of money made or not, do not know. That's
And-
just the rate the county sets.
You may not know this, but out of curiosity, if the village decide not to be in agreement, what will the county do as far as transporting people?
I don't have the answer to that. I do not know.
We might get stuck with a bunch of prisoners sitting in our holding cell.
Stuart, if I
Yeah.
may, I'm sure you had a conversation with Chief.
Well,
In
Chief's
regards to
aware of
this,
this because it
That's
comes
right.
through their
Was there any
office and it
concern
comes
so
up.
far on his end?
Yeah, this is actually currently, and I just have my memo here, I apologize. The village the numbers are slightly higher for this. If in the earlier contract, we were currently receiving $219.27 plus mileage. So it would go up to $224.75 and then up to $230.37. So Chief's aware of this, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with the continuation of the agreement. I mean, it's happened for a while, and it's necessary to operating. I just have a question that I just don't know. Women, yes. My question is, additional rates or special, like you said, women. When it comes to women, when it comes to
Right, why are women a special
Yeah.
case? Why do we get to charge
Because-
more for transporting a woman?
Because a matron goes along with the correction, with the police officer.
that's an interesting discussion.
I guess
to
if we
have.
had more women officers, it would be less of an issue.
That's what that's exactly, what it says is, to quote it directly, let me just see, transportation of female prisoners, which would involve one officer and one matron, and there will be a reimbursement for the matron. So that's why they are separated.
It doesn't matter if it's a female officer.
Doesn't say.
There's no expectation that we would have enough that would be
It
an
does-
option, I guess.
Remember, this is a form contract for every municipality.
Well, we
So-
don't have enough.
It's
but
like
there-
stock,
there-
right?
yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just asking because, like, during a time of, gender equality and all that, what happens if a prisoner identifies as a different,
Mm.
then I
Yeah.
just have a lot of questions. That's all. But
Yeah,
I'll,
but they do address those questions a lot, and it's actually, if you look at criminal justice reform and
Yeah.
concerns, the people who are most abused in prison are people who are gender non-binary conforming.
it's just because they
It's-
don't look
it-
the standard.
It's
yeah.
it's a real issue, and it's not going to get resolved in this contract.
Agreed. No, I just agreed, and thank you, Stuart. I just wanted to bring it up and ask because
No problem.
So the
I know
question we're being asked is to do what?
Authorization to allow the village manager to execute the.
It'll be on the agenda next week.
Okay, I'm in support of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, on the agenda.
Hey, oh, is that in this week? Is that in our special resolutions?
No, that's
Yeah,
not,
we'll do
that's
that
not
next
one of your
week. Okay,
resolutions
next week.
tonight.
It's not that time sensitive, I guess, since it was going back to January 1st. Madam Manager?
Next up, declare police vehicles as surplus, vehicles 103 and 105.
Thank you again, manager. There
My
are,
pleasure.
here we go. Pads. Okay. There are two police vehicles we're talking about. Let me deal with them in numerical order. First is car 103, which is a 2016 Ford Explorer, which was involved in a motor vehicle accident and was totaled. That accident occurred on March 14th, 2019.
in the vicinity of Pheasant Ridge Road, and that's car 103. The second involved car 105, which, according to the report, was I apologize, that was a 2012 Chevrolet Caprice Police Patrol vehicle. That vehicle was also involved in a motor vehicle accident that occurred on July 8th of 2019. Both vehicles have been considered as totally that they cannot be repaired, airbags deployed, front ends pretty much smashed in, and both considered total losses. So the police department has asked if we could provide a resolution declaring the vehicles as surplus so that the police department can dispose of as is.
Any questions or comments?
No, not on this particular matter.
All right. We'll see that next
Thank
week.
you.
Okay.
Moving on.
DPW New York State Snow and Ice Agreement.
Thank you, Karen. This is a new agreement with the state for providing the village to provide snow and ice removal services on 14.40 miles of state roads. The contract would run for a period of 5 years, beginning July 1st of 2019 until 2024. This agreement, it physically looks a little bit different than other agreements because there's different calculations that the state asked us to perform. But effectively, the state has to confirm our numbers, but it would appear that we would be receiving $40,638.43 each year for 5 years for the 14.40 miles. That does not include extreme weather situations, which is a separate calculation that the state makes. They use something what they call J miles, and it determines basically, they come up with a factor, and if it's over 1, it's considered to be an extreme winter, and that could justify some additional funds. But the contract is fairly similar to the prior contracts, but since the state has essentially decided not to just do annual renewals, but to in fact enter into new 5-year agreements with the various municipalities, that's what we have here. This agreement can be rolled over 4 times after this. It's a total of a 20-year contract, but each contract would be 5 years. The village would have to notify the state that it wishes to roll the contract over, but the contract cannot be any longer than 20 years pursuant to state policy. But again, the number at this point is $40,638.43. The resolution, which would authorize the village manager to execute this agreement, would include a provision that it is subject also to review by the state, because while we've given them our calculations, they have to review the calculations as well. And those calculations are essentially based upon labor materials, and equipment. And all those are put together, they're added together, and we came up with a number. So that's what it is. If anyone is interested, in the 2016 year, the total paid to the village was $35,231.15. 2017-2018 total paid was $48,854.29, and 2018-2019 total payout was $39,374.78. All those included the extreme weather payments that we also get from the state. So the 3-year average on what was actually paid to the village comes to $41,153.41. So what is calculated here is slightly below that, and would be paid, as I said, for the next 5 years. That number, though, would be subject to revision over the years. For example, if the labor costs change through a new collective bargaining agreement, that would increase it. If there are changes in the cost of supplies, that can change, or with equipment. So those numbers can be changed. If the number of miles that we are asked to suddenly plow increases, that would change, or if it decreases, that would change.
I just want to clarify, the $40,638 per year for this contract does not include extreme weather.
That is correct.
So when you did the average of $41,153 for the last few years, that did include the total payment with extreme weather.
That is correct.
So if we have snow, we're likely to see an increase in
That would be correct. Okay. Yes.
Good, because expenses are most likely going up. It would be nice if they went down, but okay. Questions? We'll see you this next week.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is awning permit request for 85 Croton Avenue, Las Americas.
Thank you. And this is an awning permit requiring BOT approval. In the packets, you were provided with the application, including photographs of the proposed awning, color swatches for the proposed awning. There is already an awning up. This is just a new awning at that location. It has come to us from the building department.
The packets are online because they're not here. So
Yes, if you go to
online, right?
yeah, it's online, correct. Just seeking approval for the permit so that building department can then proceed with its issuance, and we can go up. Everything else, they have the insurance certificate. They've provided approval by the property owner and other information relating to the sign. Morning.
Yeah, and I'm happy that we're able to move it forward quickly. This is one of those things, it's sort of a weird thing that it comes to the village board, that it is one of our approvals, and the reason why it does is because
It's over village.
Yes, over the village right of way. But because I don't want to slow things down, I appreciate when we can move it forward quickly and we don't become an obstacle to a business being able to get their signage in place or their awning in place. All right. So this will be part of the special session. So do we?
That is correct.
Is there anything else before we make a motion to move into the special session?
Nothing on this agenda, no.
All right. Then do we have a motion to adjourn to special session?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, into
Clerk
special.
Kahan?
Yes, thank you. I'll put that hat on. Okay. Well, first of all, good evening. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board on any of the resolutions tonight? Got it. Okay. Resolution A. Resolution authorizing the village manager to sign an extension of the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Ossining for the provision of water and other related services to the unincorporated portion of the town of Ossining. Whereas the village of Ossining and the town of Ossining entered into an agreement on the first day of January 2002 for the village to supply the unincorporated area of the town with water. And whereas the term of the January 2002 agreement was 15 years commencing January 1, 2002, and whereas the village and town have subsequently mutually agreed to extend the terms of the January 2002 agreement, most recently to August 31, 2019, and whereas the village and town want to extend the term of the January 2002 agreement until June 30, 2020, under the same terms and conditions set forth in the January 2002 agreement, now therefore be it resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign an extension of the January 2002 agreement with an expiration date of June 30, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Comments on the board?
So, what does this 2002 agreement say? This is actually my second time. I think we talked about this in June 14,
2002 agreement is the water agreement. The unincorporated portion of the town pays 50% above what the village residents pay for water. It also provides with regard to maintenance, which is essentially a village function, but the primary thing deals with the cost of the water.
Is there a reason that we're not going past this particular date, June 30th, 2020?
At this point, we've generally done, it's been on 1 year, 1 year at this point. That's what the town and the town has agreed to do as well. So I believe the town passed a similar resolution last evening.
Anybody else?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution B. Resolved that pursuant to Village of Ossining Code, Section 229-5, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining approves the application by Paraladas Las Americas, located 85-87 Croton Avenue, Section 89.16, Block 1, Lot 5, for an installation of an awning in accord with the application dated August 14, 2019. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Comments on the board? Clerk Kahan?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution C. Whereas by resolutions dated January 16, 2019 and February 6, 2019 amended, the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees unanimously appointed Michael Lance to the position of Police Sergeant in the Village of Ossining from eligible list number 71-198, effective January 21, 2019, at an annual salary of $125,143, which appointment was subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks, no more than 52 weeks. And whereas Michael Lance has completed more than 33 weeks of the probationary period, more than 20 weeks in excess of the minimum probationary period. And whereas the Chief of Police has recommended to the Board of Trustees that as a result of Michael Lance's exemplary work during his probationary period as police sergeant, that the probationary period be concluded effective September 11, 2019. Now therefore be it resolved that the probationary period for Michael Lance for his appointment to the position of police sergeant in the Village of Ossining is concluded effective September 11, 2019, and is further resolved that the village's Director of Personnel and/or his/her designee shall provide to the Westchester County Department of Human Resources such documents as required to record the conclusion of the probationary period for Michael Lance and to reflect his permanent appointment to the position of police sergeant in the Village of Ossining. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Does anyone want to comment on this?
So typically probationary periods are 52 weeks?
Right.
No further questions.
Okay, and for the public's interest, he's doing a great job. We're very pleased. It's unusual for us to take the initiative to shorten somebody's probationary period, and it's being done at this time to allow for greater flexibility and potential other hiring practices for patrol officers. So that's where that's coming from.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you next week at the legislative session at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court facility at our usual time, 7:30 in the evening. This meeting is adjourned.